There's never been in the history of mankind something that you can own that can't be taken from you. This is the most powerful exclusionary technology that you could ever hope to have. When it comes to self-custody, it is the difference between being a truly sovereign individual that has sovereign control over sovereign property versus someone that's got a claim to property. You're defending potentially the most valuable thing that's ever been created on Earth.
Just treat it like 10, 100x the value today and get set up as if it was like that.
Number one mistake is sort of laziness. My house burns down, I'm boned. Like, I lose that piece of paper, I'm boned. Like, all kinds of just dumb things.
If you can drive a car or you can use online banking, you can learn the skills to self-custody your Bitcoin.
Now is the time to be figuring out how to take care of that when it's not a high-pressure situation. Now is the time to be getting comfortable with, like, oh, this is how I move funds, this is how I access funds, this is what happens if I lose access to this thing, this is what happens if I can't get to this thing. Get the skills you need, take self-custody, and then once you get all that down, go run a node.
Welcome back to the show. Today we are joined by Daniel, another co-founder of Microseed, an amazing bit of kit that if you haven't already checked out, you definitely need to. Daniel, welcome to the show. Thanks for jumping on. And to get us started, I guess we'll bring it right back to how you got into Bitcoin to start with. And then along that journey, when did you realize self-custody was so important?
Well, thank you for having me first, Finn. It's nice to I finally put a voice and a face to a name and everything. Oddly enough, I started really early, like around 2010. And I was like a gold bug. I grew up in like a libertarian household. My dad was a gold bug. So I was kind of familiar with sound money things. But when my dad passed away in 2010, I had a little bit of money and I was like looking at gold and stuff. But I read about Bitcoin, right? And I started tinkering with it. I started trying to mine it. I could never really figure it out. And then I finally ended up getting some. It was kind of a convoluted thing the way I got it, but it was like shortly after I got it, like the price nuked, and I was just like, oh, whatever, this is a scam. And I just deleted everything, all the apparatus I had installed at that point. I just deleted it. I have no idea how much I had or any of that kind of stuff. But it was about 5-6 years later. I was doing a Master of Laws, and I was doing a research paper on anti-money laundering rules. It's like a 4-part series. Is in the Banking Law Journal, and in that, I actually discuss Bitcoin. Like I go through a not super deep dive technical detail about it, but I was talking about Bitcoin in a way that I don't think a lot of other people were in 2015. And I was actually referencing the research that ended up becoming chain analysis and things like that. So I was around Bitcoin and aware of its technical capacities for, the better part of a decade. But once I had gotten rid of it, I was kind of in that mode of like, I missed that boat. And then like every time I'd see the price, it was like, oh, it's $2,000. I guess I missed that boat. And then it's like, oh, it's 10 grand. Oh, I guess I missed that boat. And like, no, it's 50 grand. Oh, I missed that boat, But it wasn't until about 2020, I had a friend that was like a shitcoiner, the guy I was working with. But he's also huge into Bitcoin. Like he's primary Bitcoin guy. And then he was like dicking around with like Solana and Polkadot and all this weird shit back in the day. And he was running around telling everybody, buy it, you should buy, you should buy, you should buy. And I was kind of getting into crypto dabbling kind of stuff at the time anyway. It was like, oh, this is interesting. I didn't know crypto had grown into such an amazing new thing. Little did I know it was all just a hustle and a scam, right? It's just like, it all sounds great on paper, but so did like .com 1.0 back in the day, right? But when you finally see what's under the hood, you go, oh, there's nothing there, But it was right after that point, I started kind of stacking Bitcoin. And then there was the Breedlove series, and then Jason Lowery's book, kind of the two of them put together, Breedlove Sailor and Lowery's book, that really kind of cemented a lot of my previous thinking about Bitcoin, my understanding of sort of financial systems writ large and monetary systems writ large and things like that, and my history of like gold bugging and all that kind of stuff. That all kind of coalesced right around kind of leading into that last bull market. And after that, it was sort of like, oh, this is way more important than I thought it was. And I've been kind of Bitcoin only ever since.
A super cool story, and you hear it all the time of people that got in super early, but then did they actually, and then they come back around to it and realize what it was. It's super interesting to hear those kind of stories. We're going to kind of divert into some kind of short, quick fire questions, more of a high level really for people that perhaps are new to self-custody, to help with their understanding and hear your perspective. So bringing it right back to high level stuff is, what's the difference between self-custody and collaborative custody or an exchange, and why should people look into and learn the skills for self-custody?
Well, it's It's a tough question because I don't think what makes it hard is that there has never been, and I can't stress this enough, there's never been in the history of mankind something that you can own that can't be taken from you, right? And that sounds kind of like trivial. If you just hear it, you go, "Oh yeah, but like no one can take my car, no one can take my house," and you got to step back and you got to get to a really high level and start going, "Yeah, to a point." Like when you own a house, quote unquote, you own a piece of paper that says, I have the right to enter this house. And that's backed by the sovereign, the government, right? But they can revoke that at any time. And they do it all the time. They go, hey, we need a freeway here. And you go, I'm not moving. They go, yeah, you are. And they'll come just scoop you off the property and they'll bulldoze everything. They don't care. And they have absolute authority to do that because they have all the guns and the people and they have the entire apparatus to back that up. So when you tell someone, I've got something that no one can take, they think immediately about tangible things, but Bitcoin is very different than that. This is a non-sovereign granted right of exclusion to valuable property, and that the Alexander the Great didn't have access to that. King Tut didn't have access to that. The King George didn't have access to that. The president of the United States never had access to that. Like, this is the most powerful exclusionary technology that you could ever hope to have it. And so when someone says, oh well, should I keep it on an exchange or should I take self-custody? I go, you can't take self-custody lightly because it's important, but it's important because you're securing the most valuable possible asset you could ever hold as a human being. So you need to take it seriously when you get there. But the difference between having that and having it on like Coinbase or on an exchange, collaborative custody gets into a whole different thing. So I'll kind of leave that aside for the moment. But when it comes to self-custody, it is the difference between being a truly sovereign individual that has sovereign control over sovereign property versus someone that's got a claim to property. And it's the difference between wearing your coat and having it at the coat check and a little tag in your pocket, right? Like you can say, I got a coat, but it ain't going to keep you warm if you only got the tag. It only keeps you warm if you got it in self-custody, if that makes sense. So I don't know if that's too high level, but that's exactly why I stress self-custody so much.
Yeah, that's a great analogy, and there's some points there that I'll ask in a few follow-up questions
Yeah.
time. Another high level one, you've got hot wallets and you've got cold wallets.
Mm.
What what are the differences there, and what are things that people need to consider between a hot wallet and a cold wallet?
Well, I mean, in terms of a hot wallet or cold wallet, they vary wildly, right? Hot wallets mean they have some access to technology. They're going to have network access, they're going to be interfacing with other computer components. All those kind of things are, for the most part, fine, right? Like if you had $1,000 on a hot wallet on your computer, you go, well, it's no different than having access to your bank account on your computer, right? And in fact, in some cases, it might be riskier to be having your self custody of your bank information on your laptop because that can all be compromised. Viruses, you know, social hacks, what you name it, any kind of way some scammer could come along and separate you from that. Cold wallet is a very different thing. It's if it's done right, and not all of them do this, it's air gapped. It never touches other hardware. It doesn't have, or it has way fewer vectors where something malicious could come in, intercept and interrupt your ability to access your Bitcoin or make it so someone else can access your Bitcoin when you don't want them to. So hot wallets are great for keeping a little bit handy, right? They're great for having something that you want to move around. They're great for transactions. They're great for like, hey, I'm going to the Bitcoin conference. I want to go buy some Bitcoin underwear or whatever it is, and I want to use Bitcoin to pay it. That goes on a hot wallet, right? Cold wallet is the thing that you want to be treating more like if you were a dragon watching over your pile of gold, that's your pile of gold. That's the thing you want to defend the entrance. You want to defend all the possible ways that people can get to it. You want to make sure that's as secure as possible. So you have to be very careful when you set it up, A, and you also have to be very careful when you access it. And C, you need to be able to make sure that you can continually access it and ideally keep others from doing the same. So I hope, again, not too high level or too opaque or abstract, but the difference is something that's accessible, ready to use, and more vulnerable. Doesn't make it completely open, but it's more vulnerable to more risks. The cold wallet has fewer vulnerabilities, fewer risks in terms of illicit access, but it carries a lot more risks in terms of like you maintaining access and you being able to retrieve and things like that. So that's the kind of core thing.
Yeah, and it's not one or the other either. It might
Right.
be that you have the majority in cold storage, but like you said, you might be going to a Bitcoin Vegas this month and wanting to buy a microseed, in which case you might load your hot
Nope.
wallet with some sats.
Yeah.
And what you said there in terms of there is right and wrong ways to set up your cold storage. I'd like to think that my clients know best practice when it comes to this, but
Yeah.
for someone listening that perhaps has never heard this kind of terminology before, what things could go wrong, or what does best practice perhaps not look like when they're setting up a cold storage?
This is a tricky one, and I'm always hesitant when people ask because it involves some level of technical expertise, right? And I'm not saying it like you got to learn how to be a C++ programmer and you can do Java in your sleep and all that kind of stuff. But I am saying that if you're the kind of person who kind of goes, oh, I don't really get where my email comes from, but I just know how to use it, or I'm kind of like a surface level user of apps on my phone or things like that, there are things in there that can trip you up and you can get kind of sidetracked on. I think one of the biggest, most important things to do is if you're not technically inclined, you should go seek professional help. The service you're offering, I think, is brilliant. I think it's wonderful. I love that you're doing that. I think it's such an important thing in the Bitcoin ecosystem for people to do that. But there are also other services like Bitcoin Way and things like that that can kind of do a similar thing. But if you have a stack worth keeping and you don't really know what you're doing, the most important thing you can adopt is a sense of humility and just go, hey, I'm probably going to make some mistakes. I probably should go really slowly here, and I should probably assume that there's way more that I don't know than I do, right? So one of the things I always like to encourage people to do, especially if they're just getting started, is to go start with something like a hot wallet. Aqua Wallet, I think, is a great opportunity to get into that because you're dealing with things like seed words and you're dealing with things like keeping that app secure, and you're dealing with like how those transfers look and what addresses look like and how you transact and move stuff around. But obviously, you don't want to put $3.2 million worth of Bitcoin on your Aqua wallet, right? You put like $200 on there. You see what it means to go like, oh, what does it mean to transfer from Coinbase to here? And if you screw that up and you send $50 into the void, you go, oopsie daisy. But you don't want to start tinkering and going like, I just won the jackpot. I'm going to send my 10 Bitcoin over to my hot wallet real quick just so I can try it, right? So I think hot wallets are great learning tools if you don't have another resource to help you guide your way through it. But you have to be careful of the resources you seek out. You have to be careful of the personalities that, because people can just give you bad information. That might be working for them and it might work for a long, long time, but then they run into a catastrophic problem and they can't recover from it. And their confidence can sometimes exceed their ability, right? So but that said, I know people that are like 65 years old that actually stacked Bitcoin when my friend at work was telling everybody you should go stack some Bitcoin. And these guys figure it out. It's not, like impossible to overcome that hurdle, but you just got to be careful about it. So in terms of like things to watch out for, obviously things like securing your seed phrase are going to be important. But if you don't know what that is, it's kind of pointless for me to tell you, like, make sure you secure your seed phrase. My priority list would be find someone who knows what they're doing and you can verify that. Don't trust verify. And second, if you don't have access to that, start small, gobble up those YouTube videos, start with a hot wallet, start moving stuff around, start figuring it out that way. And then slowly work your way up to something like an Electrum wallet. I think Electrum is great because it adds a technical layer to it because you have to figure out things like how to verify that package. Or if you're using Tails, I especially recommend it if you're using Tails because it's more secure. But that also adds some technical hurdles that you have to overcome just to get to the wallet. So it starts familiarizing you with different security protocols that are in the digital space that most people aren't familiar with. So that would be my path. Is like go download an Aqua wallet, get some Bitcoin off Coinbase, start tinkering around, find somebody to exchange with, find some lightning things to tap, find some, something that you can start moving Bitcoin around so you get comfortable with it. And then go get yourself a cold card and start really doing this for real. And that's the next step, but that's the goal as far as I'm concerned. That's the end point. So yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. And my opinion on this is if you can drive a car or you can use online banking, you can learn the skills to
Yeah.
self-custody of Bitcoin. And the
Well said.
perfect example, had a client the other week that spent an hour just trying to turn on the camera for Zoom the first time we ever talked, and he
Yeah.
is now confident with his self-custody and how to
Right.
operate. So
Yeah.
anyone can learn the process. If you need help, book a call. There's a link in the show
Yeah.
notes. But also, like Daniel said, the Bitcoin Way, they're amazing. All of us that help people with pretty much the same solution just want you to have your Bitcoin in self-custody and to be confident with it. We don't care who you go with. Pick whoever you resonate the most with. Now, moving towards the last couple of questions, another big misconception people often have is they've got the cold card. Let's say they've skipped the bullet of a ledger, but they've got a cold card and they've set it up, they've connected it, and they've got some Bitcoin in there, and they think they're safe and secure.
Mm.
Now, obviously, we need physical backups, which is where Microseed comes in. What are the biggest misconceptions around backups beyond the hardware device that you've experienced, witnessed other people thinking? And for those that perhaps have never heard this before, what's the route that people need to be considering?
Well, in terms of taking self custody and protecting your seed phrase, I would trace back to the beginning of this discussion where I said, look, you're defending potentially the most valuable thing that's ever been created on Earth. And so if someone handed you something that you immediately knew was the most valuable thing on Earth, you'd be like, oh my God. I don't think you would just be willy-nilly about it. I don't think you'd just go, oh, well, let me just scribble down where I put it on a piece of paper and just go throw it in a drawer somewhere. Because you would know, because you're holding it in your hand. And there's that slight disconnect there because you never hold a Bitcoin in your hand. You're never, I mean, you could probably get my golf ball marker, but that's not quite the same thing, right? So it becomes like this kind of abstract concept, right? And you're really defending code, but it's a different kind of mindset, right? So when it comes time to like securing your seed phrase, like the number one thing I see people do, and I know this because I did it myself, right? Like when I first got my cold card, I had the competitor's product, and I sat there looking at it, and I had the cold card, and I had that, and I was just like, oh God, I don't feel like dealing with this. And it sat there like that for 3 months, like my beautiful orange little cold card just sat there, just like not doing anything, collecting dust. It was a paperweight. And then the little stamping thing was just sitting there like a paperweight. So I finally got around to setting up the cold card, doing all that kind of stuff, moving some funds around. And then I went to like, oh, I should back up my seed phrase. Oh God, I don't. So that was another 3 months. Meanwhile, now again, this isn't my whole stack. This isn't like this huge amount, but there's a sum of Bitcoin that's sitting there kind of just randomly ready to be lost at any given moment. My house burns down, I'm boned. Like I lose that piece of paper, I'm boned. All kinds of just dumb things. And if I might have transposed something on that when I wrote it down, boned. So I think the number one mistake is sort of laziness. And I say that because I'm guilty myself, right? And beyond that, it's like, well, I set it up, and then they start coming up with like, well, I want to save some money on this step. Like, I don't want to go and get some, like, I don't want to get the expensive plate or the hammer. I don't need all that. So I'm just gonna do this or do that. I go, that's fine as long as you're putting it in something that it can withstand a fire, it can withstand being flooded, it can withstand, a collapse or something like that if your house burns and it falls over, whatever it is. And also something that you can retrieve. Ideally, it's something that you can make multiple copies of because you don't necessarily want all your eggs in one basket. You want some sort of geographic variability to this, but that also opens up new avenues of concern, right? So all of it is always trying to keep all of these different factors in balance. How well can you recall things? How well can you recall your procedures? Did you come up with some crazy little code scheme to figure out what order your words are in? Is it just plain numbered? There's a lot of different strategies that can come into this. Part of the reason I invented the microseed was selfish because once I finally sat down with that plate, that was the biggest pain in the ass I spent in ages. Like I banged my fingers twice with a hammer. I was just pissed at the end of it. And I'm sitting on the garage floor like a baboon. My girlfriend's making fun of me. I just look like an ape. And when I was all done, I was like, well, what if I want to take this on a plane? Or what if I want to go somewhere else with it? Or what if I want to do this? And I was just like, God, or what if I just want to make another one? Or what if I just want to sweep a wallet and make a new wallet? It's like, what? I got to go online and order all this shit. So with the microseed, you can just go buy another washer at the hardware store. So it's super easy to just, make a bunch of different things. But that also introduces some of its own risks. So I don't want to get into too much of the weeds here. But to answer your question cleanly, I think the number one biggest mistake people make is to take it for granted. Number two is just being lazy about backing up their stuff. And number three is choosing poorly on the media that they back it up with. But I don't care if it's our product, a competitor's product, you just go down to some scrapyard and get a big piece of steel and figure out some way to engrave all those words in it. As long as you have something that's durable, I think you're already ahead of most of the people out there that are tinkering with this stuff. But once you get to that point, and especially if you start getting a stack that matters, And that might be a lot more people than they realize right now, because it doesn't take much for that Bitcoin price to get to a place where all of a sudden your little like zero point 0.1 Bitcoin or zero point 0.2 Bitcoin is all of a sudden like, oh, that's something that makes me a target. That's something that is generational wealth. That's something that is important to take care of. And meanwhile, I haven't been fixing any of that because I assumed it was 2 grand. Now I'm looking at it going, oh shit, I've got, 2.3 million worth. Oh my God. Now I need to figure all this stuff out. But then it's a pressure situation. You see what I'm saying? So I hope that answers the question in enough detail to make it feel important because it is. It's such a critical step to make sure you protect your access, is what it boils down to.
Yeah, it does completely. And I often think that staying high level sometimes actually causes people to take action more than getting too technical, where they get overwhelmed. And like you said, then put it off for a bit longer when it doesn't need to be complicated. And a matter of fact, most times when you do go too complex, it actually makes it less secure than if you just get things in the right order, done the right way.
Yeah.
Um, and I always say, to your point on the future value, is just treat it like 10, 100x the value today and get
Exactly.
set up as if it was like that, because it will be there in the future.
Yeah.
Who knows when, but it will be. So why mess around with it
Yeah.
today?
Yeah. Exactly.
Um,
Low right now, right? Like the stakes are super low. If you make a mistake with 0.05 Bitcoin, it's not catastrophic for most people. I mean, if you're like some, like day laborer in Zimbabwe, that might be a big deal. But for most of us that live in the West, it's kind of like, ah, shit, I can't believe, but that's kind of like the same thing as like, oh, I crashed my car. Like, oh, this is going to be a pain in the ass, right? But it's not irrecoverable. But like you said, someday in the future, that thing could be worth a lot of money. And now is the time to be figuring out how to take care of that when it's not a high pressure situation. Now is the time to be getting comfortable with like, oh, this is how I move funds. This is how I access funds. This is what happens if I lose access to this thing. This is what happens if I can't get to this thing. This is some backup plans. But you can start building out your security apparatus slowly. But to your point, if you go, well, I've got my stuff in cold storage, I've got a cold card, and I've got a titanium plate or a titanium washer or whatever it is, I got my seed words on that, and it's tucked away somewhere safe that I know how to get to, and it's hard for someone else to get to. You go, 99% of your problems are gone. Like in terms of self custody, right? Like the vast majority of the risks are kind of effectively eliminated there. You start getting into these hypothetical risks, and that's where all that tech talk and all these people start complicating. Well, you got to have a VPN, you got to go into like a remote server and then do this, and that's how you get this. And it's just like, dude, you're talking people right in over a cliff. Like, just keep it simple, keep it straight. Goes from here to here, A to B to C. Do this, do this, do this, and then figure out other stuff after that. And that kind of gets it more into imagineering and stress testing and all that kind of stuff. A lot of it requires just a little bit of humility, a little bit of comfort with simplicity, and a little bit of just understanding that most of the protections are robust because of most people won't know what you have, right? And then after that, it gets into more unlikely scenarios. My house burns down, et cetera, et cetera. Then it gets into really potentially unlikely scenarios of like, oh, well, this organized gang of kidnappers has targeted me and isolated me and decided that I'm worth so much money that they're going to come and risk all kinds of felonies, maybe getting shot, maybe getting, all kinds of stuff to try and come and hustle my Bitcoin out of me. So it's a sliding scale, but that's kind of the nature of security work, right?
yeah, you've hit the nail on the head there. It's levels to it, and that's what I say to everyone. But if you talk about the top level before they've even done the first level, then they won't do it at all, and then they miss the whole point. So it's an interesting psychological game in terms of how to talk about it and how to frame it, especially people that are brand new, which you don't want to scare away.
Right.
Now, to finish us off, I spoke to Fritz in the previous episode a bit
Yeah.
about this with the microseed specifically, which, like I said at the start, is an amazing, amazing bit of kit.
Thank
For
you.
those that don't know, it's a way to back up your seed phrase multiple times without needing to buy new slabs every single time. And the current model is easy to lose, which is a feature, not a bug.
Yeah.
But just before we went live, Daniel, you mentioned about some iterations and some future developments. I don't know if you're happy to talk about those publicly yet or not, but if
Yeah.
so, then I'd love to share that with the audience and talk a bit more about the microseed specifically.
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned earlier, this was a selfish invention, right? Like I literally sat down, I banged out this plate, and I was just like, I just want something like because I saw the DIY stack of washers, and I was like, well, that's cool. Except I got to, what am I going to carry around a stack of washers? How am I going to get that through TSA? How am I going to get that past a border checkpoint? How am I going to, I'm a paranoid guy, right? I'm a paranoid Bitcoiner, right? So I thought, hey, it would be cool to get this down on one washer, just all 24 words, one washer. Certainly somebody makes this. Nobody did, so I did, right? But since then, I've realized like, hey, there's a lot more capabilities here. There's a lot more capacity here. And so the new redesign slightly enlarges the washer surface. It goes from like a 26 millimeter washer to like a 32 millimeter washer. But what that does is it allows things like we're introducing very shortly here lowercase and special characters, all 27 special characters. I don't think anyone else is making this. We had to have a custom mold made from the manufacturer. These things are custom forged just for us, but they literally have every single special character that are commonly used in complex passwords, passphrases, all that kind of stuff. We also have lowercase. We also have larger font, 2 millimeter punches now. But with the slightly larger footprint, that enables us to effectively, you can put in 2 millimeter text all of your 24 words. You'd have to truncate them down to like 4 or 6 letters. If you don't understand what that means, I apologize, but there's a list. Finn can probably explain it to you in more detail later. But you don't have to reproduce the whole word. You just need the first 4 letters, and you can know what that word is as long as you have access to the word list. But what this larger format does is enables not only all 24 words to be on one single washer, but you can also put a complex passphrase on there. You can put complex passwords on there. So this becomes like a great offline storage, not only for passwords or passphrases or any of that kind of stuff, but also things like, oh, I need to keep my master password safe for my password manager on my computer. You can stamp that out pretty easy. So that's one of the big changes. We're working really hard to get the price down because it's a very expensive tool, and we appreciate that. And our goal is to get this into more hands, but the current way we're making it is just hard to do. So the new version is going to bring some of that cost down, but we're also coming out with much more inexpensive solutions as well. Things like credit card size titanium plates that are very inexpensive, very easy to replace, and very easy to just bang out a seed phrase. So you don't even have to go buy the complex little microseed machine. You can just get a couple of plates, a hammer, and our punches and just go to town. But all of it is designed and oriented around this idea of we want to make it as easy as possible for people to take self custody, and we want to make it as durable a format as possible for as reasonable a cost as possible. And that's kind of the core ethos behind all of this is like make it so everything that we do is oriented around two very specific things: take self custody, and by telling people to take self custody, we also get an opportunity to say, hey, it's really important you run a node. And those are the two things that I look at and I go, you can debate about BIP 110 or you can debate about all these different things or which node software to run. I go, I don't care. Just run a node, take self custody, and you're already participating in the revolution in a manner that is going to matter. And it's going to matter dramatically, I think, in the next 5 to 10, maybe 15 years. That's going to be the real revolution in finance, the real revolution in the monetary order globally. But it only works, and it only works effectively if it's by plebs for plebs, not for Wall Street bros to package up and turn into a gambling token.
Couldn't agree more. And what an amazing way to close out. Run your node, back your seed phrase, and everything else up, and take best practice. Just to close us off, I'll obviously put Microseed in the show notes. Where can people find you specifically for those that resonated with you? And then any closing messages if you have any.
You can find me at Daniel21E15 on Twitter. That's my personal account. I'm knee deep in writing a book right now, so I haven't really been on there too much lately. I'll probably start showing up again. I've got just a couple, 3 more chapters to finish revising, and then I'm done, which will be nice. But Microseed_IO is where you can see most of my current tweets because that's the one I kind of have to do for the business. So yeah, if you want to check me out, I've got some other fun podcasts that I do, and I also wrote a book that you can find on the website and things like that. You can find it on Nostr as well, and I'm also on Nostr at Daniel21E15. But if I had any closing messages, I would say first, I'm so grateful that you're doing the work that you're doing. I think it's far more important than people give it credit for often. And I just think you've got such a rich platform to do that. And you're helping people, and you're helping a broader movement and a broader revolution in ways that I think are going to become very, very meaningful very soon. So thank you is the first takeaway. And the second is to say, if you're listening to this and you're a Bitcoiner and you think Bitcoin means more than just like number go up, the most important things you can do is please take self custody. You don't have to buy a Microseed. You don't have to buy my books. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm saying just please go buy a cold card. There's no relation with us to them. They're just really cool people. They make a great product. Go seek people like Finn. Go seek people like the Bitcoin Way. Get the skills you need, take self custody, and then once you get all that down, go run a node, please, because that is one of the most important things that help keep the network decentralized and secure, because that is the thing that ensures the software layer stays in line with what the intention of Bitcoin is a critical component, because if we let that layer slide, then the rest of it becomes a little less, it becomes a little shakier overall.
Great way to finish. Run a node. If you need help with the node, either drop me a message or just follow Start9's
Yeah,
instructions, because it
Start9
is
is amazing.
pretty an amazing platform. Daniel, thanks so much for jumping on again, man. Really appreciate it. We'll have
Yeah.
to do another one some point soon. And guys, we'll see you on the next one.